What's good? It's Woog. We've got Alberto Puello, 24 wins and 0 losses, defending his WBC super lightweight title against Subriel Matias, 22 wins and 2 losses. If I were to tell you that there was an undefeated 2-time 140-pound champion that most of the boxing world doesn't even know about, that might sound a little crazy, but that's what we're talking about when we're talking about this Dominican fighter, Alberto Puello, who, again, 0 losses. He only lost his title because he tested positive for PEDs, was suspended about a year, and that was after he beat Batir Akhmedov for the then vacant WBA super lightweight title. And he has since won that title back in his second fight back after returning from the PED suspension. He beat Gary Antoine Russell, and then most recently, he won a close split decision. I mean, both of those fights, including the Gary Antoine Russell split decision. He also beat Sandor Martin via split decision, and that was a very close fight. And that win over Gary Antoine Russell is Gary Antoine Russell's first and only loss. So, although the boxing public largely doesn't even know about Alberto Puello, he was fighting on PBC for most of his career, or at least most of the elevated part of his career, but he's very unheralded. He doesn't have a lot of recent knockouts. In fact, only 10 of his 24 wins have come via knockout. So he's a boxer, which you could understand why there isn't some sort of like huge fanfare, but he is pretty damn good. And you know, I thought that this opponent that he's about to fight right now was about to happen a couple of years ago, because Subriel Matias was also fighting on PBC and he was champing at the bit to get a shot at the title. He eventually got a shot at the vacant title against Jeremias Ponce, and he stopped him in the 5th round after Ponce started off really hot. And Subriel Matias, unlike the sweet scientist Alberto Puello, who I'm about to say is not a runner, he's a mover, but he's not a runner. Subriel Matias is somebody who will just break you down like he broke every opponent that he has beaten down. Out of his 22 wins, again, he has 2 losses, but he has knocked every opponent out that he's beaten. So he's never won a decision. Everyone who succumbs to him really succumbs to him, and they get stopped. And he's fought some real hammers too, like Jukimbayev. Look up Batir Jukimbayev. That fight was absolutely brutal. Just the back and forth. Jukimbayev was coming at Matias. Matias was relentlessly throwing his combinations like he often does. And I think that a lot of people who back Matias will say that he is misconstrued as a non-sweet scientist. Like, I don't see him as being a great boxer. A lot of people say that he's a deceptively good boxer because of how he closes distance, how he uses his legs to cut the ring off, how he pretty much is always in position to throw his punches. But this guy's breaking off combination after combination. And I said this in a recent live chat that when Subriel Matias is letting his hands go, as he pretty much almost always does, it starts sounding like a popcorn machine. Like, it's like, it's really coming hot and heavy. And that goes well into the middle rounds. In fact, it goes into some of the later rounds. Like, before he lost his most recent loss, which was a big fight in his hometown in Puerto Rico. And we know how those homecomings often go wrong. But Liam Paro beat him via unanimous decision. And a lot of people who saw that fight thought, what the hell was up with Matias that night? It didn't seem like the same Matias. I thought Liam Paro fought his butt off and was actually doing just enough moving, just enough punching, just enough standing his ground to beat Matias. And Matias was always looking like he was a step behind. Liam Paro was getting off first. Matias looked like he was a little bit too patient in trying to walk him down. It just didn't work out through 12 rounds. But before that, several fights before that, he had suffered 1 loss, but it was a unanimous decision, and he got that one back. It was against Petros Ananian, and when he rematched Ananian, it was another brutal fight. That one and the Jukimbayev fight. Go check those 2 out if you want to see what makes Subriel Matias. He ended up stopping Petros Ananian. Again, the only guy who had beaten him via decision before. He stopped him in the 9th round. Once again, he just put him in that popcorn machine. Hooks, uppercuts, jabs, right hands, just mixing it up. Tons of combinations. And he's not one of these guys who's crouching super low and bending when he's throwing them. He's pretty much somewhat upright, and he's just kind of like with a good posture, just able to kind of, they look like arm punches. But then when you start seeing the impact that they're having on the opponents, you could tell that he's getting a lot into those, even if they look like he's just kind of throwing his arms out. And another pretty good high profile fight, at least at the time, was against Ergashev. A lot of people thought that maybe Ergashev had enough bounce in his step and enough athleticism, punching power, quickness, feints, elusiveness. Some people thought Ergashev was going to beat Matias, including myself. He ended up stopping Ergashev in the 6th round. Like Ergashev, I think he had a leg injury, but I think a lot of the people watching the fight saw that the writing was on the wall and Ergashev really started to get beat down. And then it was the fight against Liam Paro where Subriel Matias, then the IBF champ, lost his title to Liam Paro, who then lost it to Richardson Hitchens. And Matias has fought twice since that loss, a 2nd round knockout and an 8th round knockout. So he's pretty much back to his winning ways, even though he hasn't fought a really good opponent since Liam Paro. And now he's going to be challenging for Alberto Puello's WBC super lightweight title. Again, this is the 2nd time Alberto Puello has become champion, and he had just, again, successfully defended that belt against Sandor Martin. So when I look at Alberto Puello versus Subriel Matias, I've long said about Matias, I said this before he fought Hedemias Ponce, I said this before he fought Ergashev, same thing with when he fought Paro. For some reason, these Matias opponents apparently didn't get the memo and they start coming at Matias. Like, how do you beat a guy like Matias? You bully the bully. Let me come at him. Let me throw a ton of punches. Look at Hedemias Ponce in the 1st round against Matias. He looked like he was trying to stop Matias in the 1st round. And I'm watching this like, man, this better work out for you, because if not, in the words of Macho Man Randy Savage, it could go real bad for you. But opponent after opponent are just taking the fight to Matias, and I'm watching this like, this is exactly what he wants. He wants you to be within arm's length, in a punching distance and range, somewhere where he could extend his arms, because he could also shorten his punches, by the way, with short hooks and short uppercuts, but so he could really let his hands go. You coming at him is making his job easy. So that's why when I see that he's matched up against Alberto Puello, which the odds, by the way, are like dead even. And keep in mind, yes, Puello has beaten Gary Antoine Russell, Sandor Martin, Batir Akhmedov, but Matias, because of the style of fighter that he is and how quickly he started to generate fans and become the boogeyman of the division, I feel like more people are aware of Subriel Matias. So I feel like that kind of evens the odds a little bit, because when I look at this matchup on paper, I'm thinking Alberto Puello is none of those things that Ergashev, Hedemias Ponce, Ananian, Jukimbayev. He's not just a come-at-you guy who's going to relentlessly throw punches and meet you at the line of scrimmage, stay there, and see who could flush who out of the pocket. No, Alberto Puello is a lot more Liam Paro, which Liam Paro could get you out of there too, but he's methodical about it and he picks his spots. Alberto Puello, again, is not a runner, but he moves brilliantly, great legs, and he'll carry that into the middle and late rounds. Like when he fought Gary Antoine Russell arguably won 3 out of the first 4 rounds, but by the midway point, you started seeing the direction of the fight, and you're like, man, Alberto Puello has taken away Gary Antoine Russell's jab, so Russell can't find Puello easily without kind of rushing inside, which Russell can also do, but Puello changes levels. Again, he moves laterally. He's there, then he's not, and he's throwing punches the whole time, and he's a southpaw, so he'll dip after throwing an uppercut and a left hand. He'll then move, and he's what I consider a 3-dimensional mover. He can move laterally, he moves up and down, changing levels, and he moves in and out. So wherever you think he is, he's not about to be there. He's always doing something like this or moving this way, or he'll smother your punch, and before you know it, you're in a clinch with him and you can no longer let your hands go. Then he'll break, and he's always looking for like little weird spots and times to throw punches. He's a very crafty fighter, and I don't see him falling into the Matias trap that so many others have. No, I see Matias having difficulty making this fight look like a Subriel Matias fight. Because look, if Matias is able to make this a high volume, just battle of attrition and war, I think Matias wins this. But I think this fight will be fought more so on Puello's terms. He's got the better legs, he's got the better reflexes, he's got the better defense, the better movement. I don't think he's just gonna stay in the pocket and make this a phone booth brawl. I haven't really seen Puello do that with hardly anyone. I see him moving, but again, not running, and I see him more so controlling the action, and I see Subriel Matias looking like he's a step behind against this guy. Again, he's not heralded. You don't see anybody who's trying to think of the fantasy matchups at 140 saying, oh, you know who I want? Teofimo Lopez, or you name it, at 140 to fight Alberto Puello. Said nobody ever. But if you really look at what he brings to the table, he is a tough guy to beat. And he isn't old yet, he's 30. In fact, Subriel Matias is the older fighter between these two. He's 33 now. So yeah, in this battle between the Dominican and the Puerto Rican, in New York City, this is a great card, by the way. You've got Berlanga Shiraz, you got Shakur Stevenson versus William Zepeda, and this is pretty much the third fight down. But when you look at this on paper, the 50-50 matchup, again, the odds are pretty much dead even. I actually see this as being an opportunity, and I'm thinking about doing this, actually putting a little something on Alberto Puello, betting-wise, because I mean, I've been seeing the flaws in Subriel Matias' game. Yes, he has a lot of incentive to get right back on the horse to make sure that he doesn't have another big setback like he had against Liam Paro. But when you watch the way Alberto Puello fights, sometimes you can't do too much about it. And yes, Subriel Matias is able to absorb great punches. Like, he's got a really good chin. Again, see that fight against Jukimbayev, Hedamias Ponce, Ananyan. He could take a punch. He could take 50 punches. He could take so many punches and continue to just break you down. But I don't think he's going to have his way against Alberto Puello. I think Puello's got too much movement, craft, defense, deceptiveness, and again, he's a southpaw. Yeah, I'm going with the Wasp is his nickname. Alberto Puello to have another successful title defense, this time against Subriel Matias. So think about that. If Puello wins this, even if it's by a close decision, he will have beaten Subriel Matias, he would have beaten Sandor Martin, and he would have beaten Gary Antoine Russell. That's a pretty nice resume, especially when you consider that he's now a two-time champion. Yeah, the PED scandal kind of rocks anybody's reputation who's gotten caught up with that. But yeah, Alberto Puello, I see him as being quality, underrated, and in this case, betting-wise, undervalued. But that's just my opinion on this. Not to mention, Alberto Puello is also trained by Ismael Salas. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Puello's game. He's also long-limbed. And although these guys on paper have the same height, same reach, I think that it's going to seem in this fight that Alberto Puello is the longer fighter as well. Style has a lot to do with that. Movement has a lot to do with that. IQ has a lot to do with that. And yeah, Puello's wins have been by a very narrow margin, but he's doing enough to pull these off, and I think he's going to do that again against Subriel Matias. Let me know if you feel otherwise. I'm sure a lot of people feel like Subriel Matias is going to get back on track and that he's going to eventually break Alberto Puello down. I just see Puello as having too many techniques. He makes the fight look very unfun for his opponent, and sometimes for the viewer, quite frankly. Sometimes there's a lot of holding, there are a lot of clinches, sometimes they're close to clashes of heads. He kind of throws those punches where it looks like right when the fighter's coming in, he's trying to catch him come in, and they, you know, kind of hit bodies, and then he pushes the guy off, and he then holds the guy. He is kind of half getting broken up by the ref, and, you know, finds ways to get little shots in those moments as well. He just does everything that besides knock you flat out, that I'm sure an opponent does not like when it comes, like, put it like this. I think that Teofimo Lopez would struggle with Alberto Puello. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. And look, I'm not here to dismiss Subriel Matias or his chances, but matchup wise, styles make fights is the old adage. I think that that's going to come into play here. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.